My name is Judy Showalter, and we are here today with Robert Doggett from the class of 1957, who is participating in the Living Legacies Oral History Project. Lori Preston and Sarah Hendricks are also with us today. Thank you for coming in, Mr. Doggett.
My pleasure.
How did you first hear about Randolph-Macon College?
Well, I think that whistle might be my hearing aid, so.
Okay.
Well, I first heard about Randolph-Macon College I saw it from the railroad tracks going from Richmond to Washington. My father worked for the RF&P Railroad, so we could ride the train free. Even though he didn't have a very big, important job, everybody got a free pass. And my mother had a sister that lived up in Northern Virginia, and we used to go up there quite a bit and ride the train. I would see the college buildings when I went back on the train. So I knew the school was here from when I was a little kid. I was from Richmond originally. Born in Richmond, lived in Henrico County for a while, and then my parents moved into the city. So that was my first notion of Randolph-Macon, but at that time, of course, I didn't think I'd end up going there. I'm a kind of a mixed-up individual. When I came along, I graduated from high school in 1952, and that was before finding yourself became in vogue. But I took a year to find myself. I guess I probably was lost. And near the end of that year, I thought I really wanted to go to college. And for some reason, I thought I wanted to be a chemist. I liked chemistry in high school. I'd never been a person that my career goal was really defined. I thought at one time I wanted to be a sports writer and go to Washington Lee. Another time I wanted to be a mechanical engineer and go to Clemson. And by the time I finished high school, I knew I didn't want to go to college, period, I thought. Somewhere in that year, I decided I wanted to be a chemist. And I also decided I wanted to go to a small school. The reason I wanted to go to a small school is a lot of my friends went to big schools. And they talked about having classes in auditoriums where the professor walked out on the stage, gave a 50-minute lecture, and they were just more than the person that was seat 56 or seat A21. A couple of them told me they wouldn't even know the guy if they saw him in the street. That didn't seem like my cup of tea, so I thought, I want to go to a small school. And since I wanted to be a chemist, I thought I did. Randolph-Macon had a terrific chemistry department at that time. In my view, it was the strongest department at the school, but I'm sure a lot of the history guys would disagree, whatever. So I was going to Randolph-Macon to be a chemist. Well, I took freshman chemistry, which I did okay, but then I saw what kind of stuff the upperclassmen were doing. And I said, hey man, chemistry is not for me. I don't want to sit in a laboratory boiling those cauldrons of stuff, and all of them had scars on their face where something had boiled up in their face and that sort of stuff. So I said, that's not for me. I want to be a physicist. So I thought I would be a physicist. So my next year I took physics, freshman physics, first year physics, or what you would call it. I liked that okay, and then my junior year I took a lot of physics. I took a lot of math too. I think I probably took before I graduated, I think I took every math course that was offered except for the most elementary one that was offered for like liberal arts majors or something. My senior year, we talked about Buddy Robinson's senior project. You had to decide whether you were going to do a senior project. So at that point in time, I had enough courses I could be a physicist or a mathematician. I thought that, heck, I'm a heck of a lot better mathematician than I am a physicist. So I opted to do my senior project in math. So I still got a BS degree, but my major was in math. I had enough courses. If I'd have done my senior project in physics, then I would have done physics. I think I took every physics course. No, I think maybe every physics course but one that was offered. So there weren't anywhere near as many courses offered in the various disciplines as there are now. It was pretty much the core stuff. I'm not sure offering all this extra stuff is good or bad, really. But the stuff I got was good. I mean, I had plenty of it, and you people probably never heard of. National Advisory Committee for Aeronautics, which was the predecessor organization of NASA. I'm not quite sure why I went there, but it's the places it isn't the greatest thing since sliced bread. It was just a fantastic, unbelievable place to work. You can't imagine the quality of the people that were working at that place, the freedom you had. It was almost like a university of some description. It's all self-contained, nothing done on the contract when I first, everything. And everyone was just first rate except for me. I don't know how they let me in, but it turned out great, and my education here was just as good as the people's education that came from these big highfalutin schools. Now, the ones that took aeronautical engineering, of course, had courses that I didn't have. But I had more math training than they had. A lot of the courses I had covered the same, in physics, covered the same material that they covered, but it was just called something else. So, except for aeronautics, which I didn't know anything about, I really had a good background, and my training here was just as good. I'm not saying I was necessarily as smart as some of these people. What I'm saying is the courses I was offered here, the caliber of the professors here was certainly comparable to the people from these other schools. I mean, I worked with people from MIT, Illinois, Duke, goodness knows what else. I mean, and I'm not saying that, like I said, I'm not saying I was smarter, but my education was comparable, which I think speaks a lot for a little small liberal arts school, about 550 people located in the railroad tracks in Ashland, Virginia, that nobody then had ever heard of, probably. So, I don't know if that answered your question. I probably told you a lot more than you wanted to hear.
Who were some of the professors that were important in math and physics and chemistry?
Well, T. McNaughton Simpson was and Blinko were the two primary math professors I had. Both of them, there was another guy in the math department, but I didn't have him. He usually taught the lower level. I've forgotten his name. His name might have been Robertson or Robinson or something like that. The Simpson and Blinko were fantastic teachers, but they were totally opposite. Simpson was more of an applied mathematics guy. We're going to solve the problem. These are the tools we need to solve the problem. That's why the glass is not here. Blinko was prove every theorem, every lemma. He was a mathematician with a capital M, so they were quite contrasting in terms of my senior year. I took a class in, I believe it was my senior year, advanced calculus. Blinko taught the first semester and covered about 2 chapters because we proved everything, worked every problem, every lemma, everything we proved. The second semester, Simpson taught the class and he covered the rest of the book. It was good of both because Blinko really made you think about the innards of the math. Simpson made you think of how you're going to use this tool. Mathematics is really a tool. It's like a computer. It's like a tool to use to do things. And Simpson was telling you how to use this tool to solve problems. So it was really a great experience. The physics department was somewhat in turmoil when I was here. The two physics professors were a guy named Blues English, and I forgot the other guy's first name, but his last name was Grove. Grove came back, went away and got his PhD. English went away and got his PhD. Both of them went away while I was here, and they brought, I guess both of them were gone probably my senior year. So they brought in a bunch of visiting professors to take up the slack, who were really first rate, I thought. The only problem was they taught the courses at night. But I can't remember those guys. But one guy was from the Virginia Institute of Scientific Research. I don't know whether it still exists or not, but it used to be at right close. There used to be an old soldiers' home right in the Museum of Fine Arts, and what was the main building of that old soldiers' home was where this Virginia Institute of Scientific Research was. But this guy was really, he was a fantastic teacher, and he was a brilliant guy. And there was another guy, I've forgotten where he was from. I don't remember his name, but he was a good teacher too. Maybe that has something to do why I didn't think I was a physicist. I don't know. Who knows? But Grove, I guess English was the head of the department. When he came back, he became head of the department. And I think there was some controversy concerning Bruce later on. And I think he quit in the huff or was fired in the huff, I don't know. And Grove, I think, became the department head, I believe. But I'm not, this is after my time, I'm not sure. Both of them were pretty nice guys, both of them pretty smart guys, good teachers. In fact, I can't think of a single professor here that I would call a poor teacher. Not all of them were excellent, but all of them were pretty good, I thought. But maybe I didn't have anything to measure against. If I'd have gone to Hampton-Sydney, when I thought their teachers were a lot better. One of the best teachers I had when I was here was a guy named Bouchon. He was just passing through. He'd been a professor at the Military Academy at West Point and taught at Richmond, University of Richmond. He didn't think Richmond had enough academic freedom, so he bought a farm. He was going to become a farmer, move up someplace near Winchester, Warrington. So he accepted, in the interim, he accepted a job teaching here for 1 year. He was just fantastic, unbelievable guy. He said if he'd have known places like Randolph-Macon exists, he wouldn't have bought that farm. But anyway, he left and went on. But he was just, that guy was, he just made you want to come to class. He made you want to read the assignments. Made you want to do the homework. I mean, he was a fantastic lecturer. But as I say, I can't think of a poor one. If I can name it, the worst teacher I had was a guy named Bullridge, who was a biology professor. Called him the Bull. And I didn't think he was not a bad teacher, but compared to the others, he was on the poorer side. Another good teacher I had was Panel, believe it or not, the guy that cut my annual up with his razor blade. He's a fantastic teacher. When I was here, I don't know what kind of requirements that people have now, but you had to, no matter what your major was, your major in science, you still had to take a sophomore level course in the social sciences. Well, being young and stupid, I guess, I just heavily weighted all my classes towards science because I really liked it. If I had things to do over again, I'd have taken another year of German. I'd have taken more of the Smell the Flowers courses than I did. But anyway, to satisfy my sophomore level requirement in a non-science, I took logic and ethics, which Panel taught. Okay, logic is, half of that's Boolean algebra, so that's just another math class. And of course, ethics was really what it was, you know, did we throw the people out of the lifeboat or not, and that sort of thing. But Panel was a fantastic teacher, I thought. And he was, in fact, I was taking his class when he raped my annual. But he didn't hold it against me, I guess. I still got an A on the class. So. In fact, he, I guess we'll talk about the annual later, but he never said a word to me about that exercise in those pages from the annual. And that's one of the things that really ate my craw. But see, I don't think there are any teachers here, not many that are alive even, well, that I had when I was here. I had Edgar McDonald for English. That was his first year here, I think. He was a pretty good teacher, I thought. He was alive at my 57th, I mean, the 50th anniversary. I don't know whether he's still kicking or not. He was a good teacher, but he was tough. Freshman English was really tough back then. I don't know what it's like. I don't know this for a fact, but I don't know. But it was really a tough class for me. Well, I did okay. I was a pretty good student, even though I was lost. a pretty good student, and so I did okay. But there seemed to be a big attrition rate in the freshman class. A lot of it associated with freshman English, and I'm just always wondered if that was by design. Well, that's just the way it was.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know whether freshman English is still tough or not. Well, the freshman English is probably equivalent to sophomore English when I was. Freshman English was more grammar. Sophomore English, which everybody had to take, was more literature. Beowulf, the Romantic poets, which I really like. It's hard to believe, right? But I really like the Romantic. Keats and Shelley and those guys. I really eat those guys. Mm-hmm. Hard to believe. But to get back about we were talking about, you can tell me to shut up anytime you want to.
You just keep going. You're doing fine.
It's probably different than that. I don't know. When I was, like I mentioned a bit about the sophomore level, irrespective of your major, everybody had to take 3 sciences too, 1 lab. Mm-hmm. They had some special courses for non-scientific majors, what they call 10. Randolph-Macon had a screwy numbering system. Most schools had courses like 100, 101. Randolph-Macon had 11, 12, 21, that sort of thing. So I think they had a 10 series of courses in physics, chemistry, biology, I believe, that non-science majors could take to satisfy this requirement. Then they would have to take one regular science class that had a lab. Everybody had to take a year of biblical literature. I don't know whether.
Not anymore.
Well, that's not bad, really. That's not a bad thing to take. It really gives you a perspective on things. I took a lot of hard, difficult courses in my sophomore and junior years with the notion of this senior project was whatever it might be. I didn't know what it was. It was probably going to take a lot of time, so I deferred some of these required courses. Like I took the second year sophomore, the social sciences my junior year. I took biblical literature my senior year, which was really a sophomore level course, which of course it was pretty easy, but it was good. Anyway, everybody had to take at least a sophomore level of a foreign language, whether you still have that or not. Mm-hmm. Everybody had to take 2 years of English, 1 year of history, world history. Mm-hmm. I think that was all the required stuff, and you were up to your own devices to take the rest. As I say, I just took everything I could in science, which, looking back on it with the perspective of 50 years, I can see that was a mistake. Maybe I shouldn't have been a scientist even. If I'm looking back, I was going to do something else. Maybe I was still lost. Even though I had a fantastic experience working at NACA and the SA, I really like history. It's kind of a hobby with me. But it's hard to work at the history store.
That's true.
But,
I think the students now would tell you, the social studies majors will tell you that freshman chemistry is the weeding course. And the scientists will tell you that freshman English is the weeding course. I think it just depends on where your strength is. But they all do think there's at least one course that's for weeding. The faculty deny that.
Well, as I say, I don't know whether it was really.
Oh, I think they do, but they deny it.
Well, I'm sure they would. They deny everything. It's the nature of the beast.
Other than academics, what were some other things you did on campus?
Well, I worked on the annual for 3 years. Mm-hmm. I belonged to a bunch of clubs like the Randolph-Macon Club, which was a history club. Mm-hmm. I was involved with Chi Beta Phi, which was the honorary science. I don't know when it was founded. The rest of the honorary type fraternities didn't have to do much, but Chi Beta Phi had regular, not every month, but had regular programs, like would bring in somebody to give a lecture about something. So you're more involved with it than, I think I was in the honorary journalism fraternity. It didn't do anything. All they did was give you a certificate, and that was the end of it. Circle K, which is like a college equivalent of Key Club. I don't know, was the Circle K still? It was organized when I was here. I think I was a charter member, I believe. Hard to believe, but the Sketch Club. I'm not very artistic, but there was the Sketch Club, and I belonged to the Sketch Club. Just people are kind of interested in drawing and art and that sort of thing. We didn't do much, really. I played football my first year, which I got a lot of, so that made me a member of the varsity club. My social life kind of evolved around the KAs. I was a KA. Okay, I mentioned I was the editor of the Fishtails, which was really the work done over summer. I drew if you dig out the Fishtails that I edited, which would be the one for 54, I guess, I drew the cover. So if you want to see my artistic skills, just don't laugh when you see them. Also, I ran for a couple of student offices, but I never won. I lost the election for president of the student body by 8 votes. Lost to classmate Sam Bland. That was about the same time the annual was excised. I don't remember whether that election was right before that or right after. That was a tough time. But that wasn't that's just the way thing was. That wasn't a traumatic experience. But kind of I don't know how things are run now about the student government and whether there even is a student government. And back in my day, the school was divided into 2 political parties, but the composition of the parties was dynamic. In other words, Organization A was not necessarily always a member of Party B. It might vary from time to time. My junior year, several of us got together and we wanted to destroy the present structure, political structure. And we did. We created a new party. We would have a candidate by the name of Sam Bland, the guy that ends up defeats me. So I'm one of the creators of this new political party. We got this new party, and here comes another group along that includes my fraternity, which was in the original, this new party that we created with Bland going to be the standard bearer. My fraternity wants to join the other party and have me run for president under the banner of the other party. I didn't think much of that, but they kept insisting, and then I got some pressure from some other organizations, so I switched parties. And Bland, the guy I had championed to run for the other job, beat me. So it's just the way it is. No hard feelings with Sam. I still know Sam to this day. He went away to Harvard, but then he came and worked in NASA. We never actually, yes we did. We worked in the same branch for a while. But he did a little bit different work from what I did. But there was no hard feelings with Sam. But the reason it was important to have you be a member of the winning party was there were so many jobs that were appointed as opposed to be elected. The new president appointed a lot of positions in the student government.
What types of positions?
Like committees, members of committees that had jurisdiction over certain things and that sort of thing.
What kind of things did the student government have jurisdiction over? How much control did the students have?
From a practical point of view, I would say absolutely nothing.
Well, at the time,
I don't think the students had any power to speak of, really, even on these groups that were combination faculty-student committees. I think a lot of pressure was typically put upon the students to fall in line with what the faculty members thought. I don't think there was as much academic freedom here, if you want to call that part of academic freedom, as the powers that be would have you to believe. To me, it didn't make any difference because that really wasn't my cup of tea. It wasn't interfering with me in my life, so who cares? My view. I mean, the student government was really transparent to me. My biggest involvement was trying to get this new party organized, and now the candidate's going to end up beating me. Although when Sam Bland became president, I worked with him to help revise and rewrite the Constitution of the student government. I mean, these are just, all these positions and jobs were just named, you know, and not, I don't see where they had a lot of function, but maybe they did because I wasn't in there. I think I mentioned in my memoir about the annual that the editors of the student publications were elected by this committee. I've forgotten the name of the committee. It wasn't a publications committee, but a student disbursement of this fund committee or something. It had 3 faculty members, 3 student members. I guess the student members were probably appointed by the president, or maybe they were elected. I believe they were elected. Anyway, the only reason I became co-editor-in-chief of the yearbook was one of the student members dug his heels in, Frank Richardson, and supported my case. Because Haskell, Professor Haskell, one of the faculty members, wanted his buddy Don Young to be the editor. Richardson was no shrinking violet, and he dug his heels in, so they reached a compromise where we became co-editor-in-chief. Now, I had no problem with Don Young. Don Young and I were friends. As friends as you are with fellow students that live someplace else you don't see in the summer, but you see during the year. But Don and I never had any problems. We worked okay on the annual. But that's one case where a student was able to have some will, but I don't think you find many more. But maybe somebody else in my class might come in and take off 50,000 examples. I don't know. But to a great extent, I went to class during the week, studied during the night, lived it up on the weekend. That's true. I mean, that's what I did. I went to one movie on a school night in my 4 years of college. Hard to believe, maybe. One movie. I had some other things that interfered. I belonged to the Army Reserve, so I had to go to Army Reserve meetings one night a week. So that knocked out one night of studying. So
was
on
that
the weekends, it's a whole different ball of wax.
Well, now was that standard for students? Was that a standard behavior for students that
No.
they were pretty quiet during the week and you were unusual?
I'll say I was an oddball.
Okay.
I mean, there were some people that studied a lot, but there was a convoy to Mary Washington almost every night if you wanted to go to Mary Washington. I mean, see, there were no girls here then, remember? Mm-hmm. Well, there were a few. I thought there were a couple of girls in my class. There was an older lady, she was probably 35, who lived here in town. She may have been a widow, I don't remember, I don't recall her name. There was a young, really cute girl. I can't remember what her name was, but she was a townie also. Moore, her last name was Moore. I can't remember what her first name was. I don't think I ever had any classes with her. Professor Panel's, not Panel, his daughter, some of the girls were associated with the faculty members. I'm trying to think of his name starts with a P. Packard, Professor Packard, he was the biology professor. She ended up marrying a guy by the name of Dave Gwynn, who was a year ahead of me. I think Harriet was a year behind me, I think. Gwen was an interesting character. If you look back at the old annuals, you see everybody had these buzz haircuts. Well, Gwen was a barber, and he would cut people's hair, probably, but I don't know what he charged, probably 25 cents a piece. And we called these haircuts dinkies, D-I-N-K-Y. And he became the dinky man. And word would get out that Dave was going to be cutting hair over in room such and such in Thomas Brandt's dormitory on Tuesday night, and a group of people would go over and he'd cut your hair for 25 cents or whatever, 50 cents or whatever it was. But he did a nice job. Mm-hmm. But if you look at the old annuals, you'll see a lot of people have these buzz haircuts, and more than likely they were cut by Dave. He was a really nice guy. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No. Since we're talking about social life, you mentioned before we started alcohol policies and whether or not they were enforced.
Okay. I don't know whether any rules and regulations about drinking or not. That would be something that's looking fishtails to see if it says anything. But there were no rules and regulations enforced, whatever the rules might have been. There was no attempt, as far as I could see, to prevent underage drinking. No checking IDs at the door. I'm not saying it's encouraged. Don't misunderstand. But I don't think there was, that I saw, any effort to try to keep young underage people from drinking. I think the drinking age was 21 probably back then. I'm not sure. What is it now? Be 18?
Well, no,
it's 21. No, it's 21 now. Now in the 80s it was 18.
Yeah, they moved it.
Okay,
like
well maybe drop down then back up.
Yeah, it was 21 at that point.
Was it?
And then it dropped down to 18.
Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying everybody was a drunkard. I'm not saying that at all.
We know that.
I think the official position of the school administration was there was no drinking, partying going on at Randolph-Macon College.
Right. I think in the 50s we were still very dry,
but
officially.
It wasn't, what I'm telling you, it wasn't dry. It was very wet. And the powers that be didn't go over to the fraternity houses to make sure that something wasn't going on. Mm-hmm. That's what I'm saying. If a fraternity had a cake party, nobody made sure that everybody was over 21 or 21 over, whatever they had to be. And that's true. I mean, they saw it. That's like, I was a KA. I'm Knights of Alcohol, right? Anyway, we had a formal dance just for the KAs. Once a year, called the Rose Formal. I don't know whether they may have an Old South Ball now. So most KA chapters have an Old South Ball, but we didn't have an Old South Ball. We had what we called a Rose Formal. Boys in tuxedos or white gentleman jackets because it's in the spring. Girls in pretty dresses. Okay, faculty. We'd have a couple of faculty members come and chaperone that party. Okay. Mm-hmm. That was a pretty sedate. Everybody acted pretty much as ladies and gentlemen, but there was drinking going on. I mean, everybody had a cocktail or two. And the faculty guys are right there looking at it. So they certainly, maybe was the chaperone for that my junior year. I remember that very explicitly. He was the dean of faculty or something like that. So here he is. He's seeing this bad stuff going on. Maybe the rules up here say this, but it still went on. But as I said before, I don't think probably most colleges at that time. I mean, I don't think this was a school of lushes. There were plenty of people here that didn't drink. Most of the people that did drink did it intelligently. They weren't, like you see that guy hanging him upside down on a telephone pole. He was drunk. Okay? But that was the exception, not the rule. I'm not saying that people sometimes. But so what? You're living in a dormitory room over here. You go to a fraternity party over here, and so you have a few too many beers or something. You stagger back to your dormitory room and fall in your bed. So what? I mean, that's a so what to me. It might not be so what to you. I don't know. But so what? Now, if you're going to drive from here to Charlottesville with a car full of kids, then
It's a different
there's a
matter.
big so what.
Mm-hmm.
But social life really, my social life, and the social life of about half the student body really revolved around the fraternities,
Mm-hmm.
for sure. And a large portion of the social life of the non-fraternity members revolved around fraternities also. The fraternity parties were generally not closed. I don't know whether they're open or closed today. There was 7 fraternities when I was here, plus an outfit called the Commons Club, which was like a fraternity. I don't know if the Commons Club is still here or not. It's like a fraternity, except it doesn't have the secret ritual.
Mm-hmm.
Every now and then I mention the K Rose formal dance. That would be a private thing. But for the most part, the fraternity parties were open. You didn't have to be a member of the fraternity to come to the party. So a lot of people that weren't fraternity members came to parties.
Mm-hmm.
So their life, fraternity life was a part of their college social life as well, although they weren't members of the fraternities per se. But I can't think of I bet the 4 years I was here as a K, I bet there wasn't, in addition to the 4 special dances, I'm not sure we had a closed party. You know, just limited to us. I'm not sure we did. We probably did. In a 4-year period, there might have been some special thing. We hired a special combo and checked in our own money, and we didn't want every Tom, Dick, and Harry coming in and listen to it. So that probably was, but I just don't. It was unusual.
Mm-hmm.
And as far as I know, it was unusual for the others because a lot of times what people did is they kind of hopped around from the various parties. I don't know whether they do that now or not.
Mm-hmm. It's more controlled now. The fraternities have to have a guest list, and you must be on the guest list to
Well,
get in.
I'm sure they probably have to give a thumbprint or something. I
It's
don't.
pretty close.
I don't. But I'm just saying
Mm-hmm.
if I had a date and went to the K house for says a party weekend, not the Panhellenic dance, but just I don't know. Sometimes it just seems like every fraternity's going to have a party this weekend for something. Not a big deal, but maybe the Kappa Sigs are going to have a combo or something. So maybe the other fraternity decided to do something too. Well, so even though as a KA, I would probably go. My date and I would probably go to back up in the parents at least at some of the other fraternity houses, particularly with the KAs, because I had a lot of friends in KAs. I mean, not K, I mean Kappa Sig.
Mm-hmm.
But generally, we probably hit them all. The 3 of the fraternities used to be over here on the street that ran from beside. Is that Mary Branch Dormitory? Is that Thomas Branch?
Thomas Branch.
Over the 3 2-story wooden frame buildings. Kappa Sig, Phi Delta Theta, Lambda Chi Alpha, and then the Ks were at the street didn't go all the way through. It ended with the K house. So you could go to those 4. Even drunk, you could stumble down to those 4. And then the Theta Chi was over here on College Avenue. Maybe it's still the same place.
Theta Chi is still in the same place. SAE is
The-
still in the same place.
SAE is the same place. Well, no, it wasn't the SAE
Or are they newer?
when I was here.
Okay.
Lambda Chi Alpha, which is no longer here, I believe. They're probably bad. They're bad.
They had a little problem.
They were down the street in the next block from the Theta Chi.
Mm-hmm.
And the SPE was over on the main drive. Yeah, England Street, yeah. So you might not make it all the way over to the SPE house, although I knew a lot of people. I knew a lot of, I mean, let's face it, the school was only
Yeah.
about 550 people. So you pretty much knew everybody in your class and everybody in the class below you and everybody in the class ahead of you. When you were a senior, you might not know many freshmen because you didn't bump into them as a course of doing business, so to speak. You're not in their classes and that sort of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So unless they belong to your fraternity or happen to be a good friend of some friend of yours or belong to some organization you work with, you really didn't know too many freshmen, but you pretty much knew a lot of the upperclassmen.
Mm-hmm.
So you knew people in all the different fraternities. I didn't have much associated with the Theta Chi's. Didn't go with that too much. I was the smallest fraternity. I don't know how many people it had. Lambda Chi was the largest, and I think the rest of them were roughly about the same size, probably about 30 people, 25 to 30. Lambda Chi was probably 40-some. Theta Chi maybe 12 to 15. Commons Club was probably 15 to 20. But the social life was pretty much evolved around the fraternities, although I don't know, once or twice a year we had a big formal dance, Panhellenic dances. I don't know whether they still have those. Big band, of course the big bands have gone the way of the dinosaur. The big band would come in. It was very nice, quite nice. Should be nice. A concert like in the afternoon, and then a formal dance that evening. It was quite well done. So it's part of the dark ages, I guess.
I miss
But
them.
you asked about what people did. I'd say most people did more activity during the week than I did. But I don't know. I studied a lot. I mean, I had to. I'm maybe a fairly bright person, but I need to study. And so I studied a lot. But on the weekends, I didn't mind studying during the week as long as I could have some freedom on the weekend. I'm not saying I didn't have to do something on the weekend sometimes. If I had some big project due, I might spend some time on the weekend. But weekends were typically mine. But remember, back in the days of the dinosaur, there were some things called Saturday classes.
I was just going to say, didn't you go to class on Saturday morning?
My freshman year, I had 2 classes on Saturday morning. The rest of the time, I had no classes on Saturday.
Hmm.
That's because I was able to get the classes I wanted and not have to take any Saturday classes. So Saturday morning classes after my freshman year, a lot of I had a heavy schedule on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And then it seemed to me I had a couple of classes that were taught like Tuesday and Thursday, but extended periods.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a lot of labs because I took all these science classes. And for the most part, they were like on Tuesdays and Thursdays for some reason.
Because of the extended block.
Well, I don't know about the extended block. Only we had.
Because it was a longer class period.
But anyway, I tried to stay away from the Saturday class. But I had like 8 o'clock class on Saturday morning.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't mind didn't mind the 8 o'clock class. I'm an early riser anyway. But, and Thanksgiving holiday was one day, Thanksgiving Day. Missed a class on the day before, the Friday after Thanksgiving, double cuts.
Ow.
So tell me it's tough now, right?
They get a little more time now.
Now, I'm not pulling your leg. That's true.
Mm-hmm.
And they probably don't even have cuts anymore. You probably can go to class if you want or not.
No, it's up to the professor. Some of them are harsher than others.
Okay, back in the Dark Ages. And yeah, you probably have all heard all this stuff before. I don't know. From the previous semester. So if you were taking a 3-hour course, like say freshman English with a 3-hour course, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday,
Mm-hmm.
you could cut that class 3 times unexcused. If you were taking sophomore English and you'd been on the dean's list the second semester of your freshman year, then you could cut it 6 times. 2 cuts per semester out. So if you had a 4-hour course like a lot of the 4 or 5 hour courses, like a lot of the science courses were, you could go from 4 to 8 or 5 to 10. Now that, you could have excused absences on top of that. If you were sick and you went over to Dr. Cosmic Ray and got an excuse from him, then that wouldn't count against the. But it seemed like to me there might have been a total number. You know, everything. I don't remember. I know the year I played football, my freshman year, I had a 10 o'clock class, I had 8 o'clock class, and a 10 o'clock class. And I missed that for football, just for football, I missed that 8 times. Because I missed it every game, whether it was home or away, except for the Richmond game, which was played at night. And that's a lot to me, that was a lot to miss a class. Plus a class like German, which language was not my forte, and which didn't come that easy. So missing that class that much was tough.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see how
10 seems like a lot to me.
Class. I learned in class. I mean, I was just like a sponge. I learned more in class than I did probably studying, I guess. I don't know. But I had to go to class. Very seldom did I cut a class. Very seldom, rarely. Even though after my first year I was a dean's list student the whole time, so I had the double cuts. But but that's part of the good old days. But I'm not sure. Look, some rules and regulations are important.
Mm-hmm.
You know, sometimes you got to draw the line. Sometimes you got to let them run away. I don't know. I think if probably a lot of people drop out, they end up out of school and do poorly because they have unlimited cuts. I mean, when you're such an 18, 19-year-old kid to have all that self-discipline, you must believe in a tooth fairy or something. But I think it was a little much not having an extra day for Thanksgiving. But another thing that this first semester didn't end until January.
Mm-hmm.
So you went home for Christmas vacation, which was not a very extended period. It was probably 6 or 7 school days, I guess. And you came back for a couple of, and while you were there, you forgot everything you learned, right?
Right.
You come back for a couple of weeks, and then you're faced with exams. I didn't think that was good. Now I think exams are before Christmas holidays, and then you have a 1-month term in January, which is probably a pretty good system, as long as you go to school the same amount of time that we did. If you just cut it down calendar days and cut it down classroom days, made it shorter, then I'm not sure that's good. But if you don't go to class, who cares? I mean, if you just, here's the book, we're going to cover the book, we're going to have an exam on December the 10th, show up. I don't know. But, I don't know. Next question.
Well, the other thing we've hinted about is the yearbook controversy.
Oh, the yearbook.
And we'd really like you to tell us the story of the yearbook controversy.
Well, at the time, that was a traumatic experience. Looking back on it from 50 years, it's something that's just terribly irritating to me today, but it was not a terrible experience. As I mentioned earlier, Don Young and I were co-editors-in-chief of the yearbook, and we thought we'd turn out a pretty good yearbook. Everything that was in the yearbook, we'd run by the yearbook advisor, was happened to be that guy, Professor Haska. Haska was an artist. His hobby is an artist. Don was into art, so maybe that was the connection. I don't know. This is all in my memoir, you know, what you call my memoir, which was a shorter version of what I originally wrote, but my wife made me tune it down. I mean, it wasn't critical. I just had a lot of extra information about me in there. But anyway, the yearbooks came in. We thought we'd done pretty good job. I don't know how he found out about it, but John Vixelio, who happened to be my roommate, but also worked on the annual at the time, knew that it arrived and he was going to distribute them, but he decided not to. He's going to wait for Don and I to come back. I don't remember where I was, but I didn't get back to the dormitory room about 5 o'clock. And Don must have been someplace too, because he wasn't around anyway. In the meantime, Panel had gotten a copy and started looking at it, and he didn't like it at all. He thought some of the pages had to go. I guess he convinced Mabry and Bowridge, who was on this committee I mentioned earlier, and they enlisted some of the students and gave them straight-edge razor blades and told them to start cutting these pages out of the annual. I don't recall whether they finished doing it all that day or the next day, but anyway, it was pretty quick. It was done without much thought and much consideration. That's the thing that really irritated me. I don't know whether anybody explained the situation to Don Young in any detail or not, but the only explanation I got took about 30 seconds from Mabry. And he said, those pictures I showed you, he said there were some pictures in there that could cause the school to be sued, and they had to be removed. Okay. He knew absolutely nothing about where those pictures came from, the circumstances on which they were taken, whether there was any threat of the school being sued or anything else. They just didn't like that feature section, and they also wanted to cut it out, and they was looking for an excuse. Those pictures were essentially posed in that room. There was no hanky-panky going on. Those girls weren't going to sue anybody. Two boys, I don't remember the girl's name, but Glenwood Holland, the girl who was with John Vixelio, who was the other guy, ended up marrying Glenwood. She was really not, the girl at the time was John's date, but she really was more of a friend than she was a girl and a friend, as opposed to a girlfriend. The picture was taken by a guy by the name of Sam Oakey, who's now dead. He was in that class. He had a funeral home up in Benton, I think it was. So they were kind of stage pictures. So those girls weren't going to sue anybody. For the life of me, I can't see why maybe a Panel, or who Panel was the ringleader in all this, why he didn't call us into the office and read the riot act to us. Panel never said one word to me about that thing. Not one word to me. Mabry said, I told you, about 30 seconds worth, and that's all he said about those offensive pictures. The school could be sued. That was it. We weren't punished. Man, you guys really screwed it up here. I really felt bad because it ruined the annual, that whole senior class. You know, they took out their feature section. So the thing that really troubled me, and the thing that really irritated me, and still irritates me, is they didn't have the nerve to call us in. And if it was so offensive, why didn't they call us in and try to punish us in some way? You know? They did nothing, and didn't even offer us what I consider to be a legitimate explanation, although I don't know what they might have told Don. But as I say, all this stuff had been approved by Haskell. They didn't fire him either. So I think they just didn't like that feature section. The school was trying to, two things. I mentioned all the stuff about the party. That's not an image that Randolph-Macon wanted to put out.
Right.
And if you look at that feature section, it's pretty obvious some parties going on, right? So we were trying to capture the life of the school as it was, not what maybe a Panel thought it was. As I say, Panel was a terrific teacher, but from that day forward, I didn't have this letter from Grillette Simpson, who used to be a dean here, and at that time he just become Chancellor of Mary Washington, talking about that incident. And he was quite critical of the way Panel and company behaved. He was more than just, hey, I'm sorry it happened, fellas. I don't want to I'm not sure I remember some of the exact words he used. I think I do, but I'm not going to say them here because I might be misremembering. But he was a lot more critical than I thought he would have been to his fellows, which really meant a lot to me. As I say, I've got that someplace in a safe place. So safe I can't find it. So, I don't know. I didn't work on the annual anymore. What could I be? I was co-editor-in-chief. I was the end of it. Johnny Vexellio, I think Johnny Vexellio should have been the one that was the editor of the annual in the senior year. So I think he was punished. He became something like co-assistant editor or something like that. But I think if Young and I hadn't screwed up, I think Johnny would have been editor of the yearbook the senior year. I think he was punished because the editors, as I said earlier, was selected by this faculty-student committee, and there weren't any Frank Richardsons around anymore to fight for John. But he wasn't punished to the extent that he was forbidden to work on it. And he was in one of the pictures. He's in the pictures. He's one of the guys in the pictures. In fact, that was taken in Johnny and I's dormitory room. The basement of Thomas Branch, is that the one?
Thomas Branch is on the corner. Mary Branch is the one.
Okay, Mary Branch is in the middle. Okay. If you face the administrative offices, were in the center section of that building back then.
Mary Branch.
The dean's office is facing the back, facing from the fountain. Left basement was the dean's office. Right basement was the financial, the treasurer, and that sort of thing. Is this the way it was when you were here? But you remember that from your archives. Huh? She's shaking her head, yes. The rooms are still there. When I came back from my 50th reunion, I wanted to take a look at those rooms. And some of the gals in my office said if I went over to the security office, a security guy would take me over there and show me the room. So I did. He did. In the basement, there are three. I don't know, you've been in the basement over there?
Well, I lived in Mary Branch.
Huh?
I've been in all of it.
Did you live in the basement where the three rooms are? Okay. In that wing to the left, in the basement, there are three rooms, two good-sized rooms and one small room. That's Johnny and I had the small room that year. Next year, we had one of the bigger rooms. Down there was a bathroom. It was a boys' bathroom, showers and that sort of stuff. But it was like a private suite of 3 rooms down there all together. So it was a tremendous place to. And that was a parking lot instead of being a fountain and all that stuff. That was a parking lot. Although very few students had cars back then. It's not like now. We just like everybody's got a car, maybe 2 cars. I don't know how many cars there were, but I was trying to think about that driving up here today. When I was in KA, I can only remember 3 or 4 people having automobiles. It was like 30 people. There were probably some more, and one of them was married. Most of the married people had cars, but the average students, most of them didn't have cars. I don't know how many were on campus. I don't know whether there were rules and regulations about freshmen and sophomore not having cars or not. I don't know. But look, times were different. It's a lot cheaper to go here then. For some reason, I think the total cost of going here my freshman year was $1,080. It's like $26,000, $27,000 now. And that was pretty much in line with public schools. My wife went to William and Mary, and she paid more than that to go to William and Mary. Now, what William Mary is probably $10,000. He has 2 or 3 times that. So the people didn't have all the money either. I think, I don't know. It seemed like to me, and this may be a generalization is not appropriate, that the kids that go here are kind of on the upper snooty category.
We have a pretty good mix. We have some upper snooty kids.
Well, I hope it's a good mix.
But we also have quite a few who are on financial aid or who work for us or who work out in the community.
My guess would be the average effective income of the parents of the students when I was here is still probably lower than the average effective income adjusted for inflation.
Mm-hmm.
The students now.
Probably.
I mean, there's no way I could have had a car. I couldn't afford it. I mean, my parents couldn't afford it. They couldn't give me a car. I mean,
Well, can I ask, how did you afford a Randolph-Macon education? Did you have a scholarship?
yeah, well, as everything else, the first year I went here, I lived in Richmond and commuted back and forth. Let me go back a little bit more. As I say, I finished, at the time I didn't realize it, but I had a pretty good high school background. I went to Thomas Jefferson High School in Richmond, which at that time, not to be bragging, was one of the best public schools in Virginia and probably one of the best ones in the South. There's like 350 kids in my class. I finished 7th in my class. I don't look like it now, but I was an all-star football player as well. I worked on the student newspaper. I worked on the annual, in the Key Club, the High Wire, goodness knows what. But I mean, that was just the way life was. I never thought about it. But I didn't want to go to college, so I didn't go to college. But I probably could have gotten in most any school I wanted to. I applied here. I've been through the bit about the chemistry. I wanted to be a chemist. It's like I want a small school and had a great chemistry department. This was a match. So I applied here and they accepted me almost overnight. A couple of weeks after that, I got a letter from Hugh Stevens, who happened to be the athletic director at the time. And he said he was able to put together a scholarship package, a little athletic scholarship, academic scholarship for me. I hadn't applied for anything, asked for anything. I guess he looked at my application. Maybe they screened for people who'd been high school players of some description. I'm not saying I was an all-world player, but I was fairly good. I had good credentials. Maybe I wasn't any good, but I had good credentials. And so he put together this package, which would, of the 1,080, which would have paid about a quarter of it. So I was going to live at home. I talked to my parents about what I was going to do, and they said, okay, you can live here. We won't charge you any room and board, and we'll let you use the car. We had one car. My father walked to work. You really didn't have to walk very far because usually somebody you work with would pick him up and take him. But so he didn't. My parents had one car for 13 years, and they drove it for 43,000 miles. Get that? 13 years, 43,000 miles. 13 years, that's like about $3,500 a year or something. It's almost unbelievable these days. There's going to be a lot of those coming up with $4 a gallon of gas. But anyway, they said I could use the car to go back and forth. There were some other people commuting back and forth. So if I couldn't use the car one day, I could get a ride with somebody else. So between what my parents supplied and the scholarship and what some funds I had, my first year was pretty much taken care of. And so I played football my first year. My second year, I really hadn't thought too much about playing football. But when this thing came through, I said, why not? You know, maybe I prove something to myself. And the athletic situation in college was a lot different then than it is now. The level of play overall is not as good as it is now. In other words, the University of Virginia football team is a lot better. The players are a lot more skillful than they were when I was playing. But it's now, like here, it's like this now. Back then, it's like that now. So it was a lot more competitive. So I guess I decided, well, I wanted to prove it to myself, well, I can play. Well, I made the team okay. I guess everybody probably made the team okay. And I ended up playing a lot. And in fact, by the end, I started the last 2 games of the season, I think it was. I started the Hampton City Randolph-Macon game. Unfortunately, we lost it 20-12. But my sophomore year, since I'd kind of proven to myself what I wanted, I wasn't all that enthralled about playing, but I asked Stevens, could I get some more money? Well, he wouldn't try to he tried to get me some more scholarship money. I'd done pretty well my first year, grade-wise. He tried to give me some more scholarship money, but he couldn't get that through. That didn't come through. He said he committed all of his athletic money. He didn't have any more, but he'd make it up to me the next year, is what he said, which would mean if I did that, it means I'd be committing myself to play 2 more years. So I decided not to play. But unfortunately for him, maybe, or the team, maybe, this package he put together initially was a lot more scholarship than it was athletic. So I got to keep that. He couldn't take that away from me. He could take the athletic part away if I didn't play. So my second year, I had less scholarship money than I had the first year. But with I worked in the summers, I worked at Christmas, and between what I could put up and what my parents generously supplied, handled okay, lived out here. Neither I or my parents ended up with any additional debt at the end of each school year. My parents were cash and carry people. I'm a cash, that's why I don't have as much anymore on what I do, is because I'm cash and carry also. My junior year, I got a nice scholarship. A guy by the name of Watts, I think Frank's first name was Frank Watts. Maybe you know something about him. He left some money in his will for scholarships. I think it had to be used for by a certain date or something like that. I don't know how many there were per year or whatever. Anyway, I got one. And that covered about 40% of my total expenses. So I had that my junior year and my senior year. I got married because we wanted to, not because we had to. January, mid-semester of my senior year. So that scholarship pretty much took care of all my out-of-pocket expenses to the college. My wife worked, so she fed me. We lived down here on South Center Street. We had a 2-bedroom apartment and shared the bath with the owner, which was an elderly lady and her mother. And it was just, the kitchen was, I don't know, maybe a quarter the size of this room. You could stand in the middle of the kitchen and such a touch on the walls. And our bedroom, living room, everything was the former dining room in this house. And then, as I say, we shared the bath, downstairs bath, with the lady and her mother. And then she rented the upstairs up to somebody else. I've forgotten what we paid, but next to nothing. But for a couple of newlyweds, man, it was fantastic. Who cares? We got stuff down the back. So, just stuff studying when in the same room and the TV's going on, that sort of thing, but it worked okay. I think my parents and my wife's parents thought my grades would probably go down the tube at last semester, but they didn't. I did okay. So it worked okay. So I got a lot of scholarship help. I worked in the summers. I saved a lot of money that year. I worked when I was finding myself. See, things were a lot. Like I said, I belonged to the Army Reserve. I was a staff sergeant. That's no big deal. Everybody here was probably a general, but the important thing was, for every meeting I went to, I got $5.12. Now, $5.12, books probably cost $40. Now, one book probably costs $70, I guess. I don't know. So that was a lot of money. So it was like $20 a month. If I could go to the meetings, it was tough to make every meeting. I didn't have a car after I moved out here. And there were a few cars to borrow. But then later on, the guy transferred in. He'd been on active duty in the Korean War. He still had a reserve obligation. He didn't have to join a unit, but he decided to. So he joined. I convinced him to join my unit. So he had a car. So now I had transportation to the meeting. But still, I missed some because of studying problems. I had a big part of the time. The Armory was over on South Richmond. You know where McGraw Hospital is? The Armory was over there. So that's quite a travel was a lot different then than it is now. I mean, whipping into Richmond or whipping over the South Side was a big deal then. It's nothing now. It was a big, when I first moved to Hampton, this side, it was a 2-hour trip from where we lived to my wife's parents, who lived in Highland Park, kind of northeast. Now you make that trip in an hour and 15 minutes if there's no big deal on. I mean, coming up here today would have been a big decision back in 1955 or so. You know, it'd be a 2.5-hour trip. You know, I don't do that. My own car take that. So, but now it's just jumping in it. But back then, so it helped that Stud Taylor hooked up with that unit for a while. Then they moved over on this side of Richmond, which does helped a lot. But, so when I finished school, I had no debt. 2 of my 3 children went to school, and when they finished school, young graduate school, they had no debt either. And for the life of me, even with all these high prices and everything else, if somebody like me from very humble upbringing, can pull something off like that, I don't see why people should have to end up with $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 worth of debt to go to school. I don't see it. I know why it does, because my daughter went to graduate school, and when she finished graduate school, she had some debt, and that's because she lived like she wasn't going to school. That's the first semester in graduate school. She lived in college supply. After that, we got to have our own apartment, we got to have our own car, we got to have everything else. And she lived just like she was working or something, but she wasn't. She was going to graduate school full time. So, but that's her problem. I didn't pay for graduate school. I'm sorry for the aside.
That's quite all right, because that's kind of our next question is, your class, the class of 1957, has decided to give money in form of a scholarship. Can you tell us how that came about? What was the inspiration for, why a scholarship and not a tree?
I mean, why a scholarship and not
Or
not
any-
larger windows in the cafeteria?
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know who was. Doug Lawson was the chairman of the, whatever that committee is, the gift committee. And I don't remember who else was on that committee off the top of my head. Doug Forrester might have been. I'm not sure who was on that committee. I really don't know. If I were taking a guess, I would imagine Doug. That was Doug's notion, but I don't know. I think it's great. Personally, I think that's a hell of a lot better than a tree, pardon my French.
Well, that's
Because scholarships really helped me get through school. I'd have been able to do it without the scholarships, but it'd been a lot harder. But I think I would have been able to pull it off without any debt, ending up with a debt, up to, I believe. But I'd have to work a lot more. My grades would have suffered because I'd have probably had to get a part-time job doing school. And especially with the school costing so much. And as I said, I got a great education. Yeah, I'm sure that people are getting even better educations now, although I still question all these extra courses, whether they really add the benefit that they think they do. We saw that kind of thing in the public schools where you started adding all these photojournalism became an English class and stuff like that. Nice stuff, but isn't it better to teach your people grammar? To get back to me, probably the kind of thing you could care less about. But an advantage I had when I went to work for NACA was I could read and write the English language a hell of a lot better than those engineering school guys. I'm serious. And you don't think that's important, then you live in Never Never Land. Because you can be the world's greatest scientist, and you can find the world's greatest widget, but if you're unable to tell somebody about it, it's useless. You might as well never found it. And it's unbelievable how poorly some of those people are trained in basic reading and writing. And it's getting worse. That's the thing that's so frightening. It's getting worse. Near the end of my career, one of my jobs was working with, they have a cooperative education program where kids go to school 6 months, work for 6 months, and that sort of thing. And they have to write a bunch of reports describing their work that they send back to the school. I mean, some of that stuff seems like it was written by about a 10-year-old kid. I mean, it's just unbelievable. I mean, it's just, and look, we're not talking about people with IQs of 0.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about brilliant people near the top of their class in some kind of engineering at some fine school that probably haven't had 2 or 3 grammar courses in their whole life. So, but anyway, that really helped me, and it's going to help a lot of the people here too that go into sciences. If you still make them take English, I don't know.
Oh, we do.
But it's got to be grammar. That's not photojournalism. It's got to be grammar, because that's what's important. I'm sorry.
That's all my questions. Did I miss anything?
How did you stay in contact with Randolph-Macon between when you graduated and now, basically? Did you participate in
I'm sorry.
between your graduation and today, basically? How did you stay in touch with the college? How did you go to homecoming or reunions throughout the years?
Is that on the tape? That question show up?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Would you prefer me to turn it off?
No, I just
yeah.
wanted. She didn't have a
Still take it.
microphone.
Oh,
It picks
It'll
up.
pick her up.
It's
Huh?
No, it picks her up.
Oh. Well, I guess all of the above to some extent. I mean, we get the alumni newsletters. I try to get back a couple of times a year to a football game or a basketball game, that sort of thing. I wouldn't say I'm proactive in keeping in touch. I mean, I'm like, remember the bit about the no phone calls. And I get newsletters. I mean, I get emails about various things, and more so under the new president than used to. But you get these invitations to these off-campus things, but I'm really not interested in that sort of thing. But I don't know. I guess I stay in touch like most people do. Just whatever those. I went to school here. It was irrespective of the annual being raped. I got a good education. I met some wonderful people here. Overall, it was a daggone good experience, and it's done me well the rest of my life. So I'm glad I went here. I'm proud of the school. I think the school is something somebody can be proud of. So, but I'm not really proactive in trying to keep in touch. The thing about I wish I'd have come up for the graduation. If I'd have known that guy was going to die, I would. I toyed with that. I might come back to the old grads or whatever it's called, Boykin Society. Of course, I didn't think that was a good idea to change that name, but I wouldn't. I appreciate the significance of that. The old building. I've even seen the old building. So, in fact, I saw it on my honeymoon. In fact, we drove by not on purpose, just.
Okay, that's not where I'd go on my honeymoon.
Well, I mean, that wasn't the purpose. Coming back we'd been down into North Carolina. We were coming back. We drove along that with 58, the road that runs down along in Virginia on the.
I think it is 58.
That goes right by Boykin, where the old building is. It wasn't planned. It was just the way it worked out. But anyway, I think the old guard had some, I don't know, Down that nice ring. I suspect there's some fundraising implications to giving it the other name, trying to make it sound a little bit more. You can answer that, I guess.
But I won't.
I don't know. I'm not proactive, but I don't really try to follow the details of what's going on at the school. I mean, I don't go out of my way to find out what's going on. Stuff that comes in my mailbox, I read in the paper. We don't read much in our paper about Randolph-Macon. And, so, pretty much, as I say, I try to get up here a couple of times, 2 or 3 times a year. I don't know. I have a torn rotator cuff in my right shoulder, and I'll have to get fixed in a couple of weeks, assuming I pass all the pre-operation physicals. I've had that done before on my left shoulder, and that puts you out of commission for about 3 months.
Mm-hmm.
Have you had that?
What? No, I've avoided it.
Huh?
But I avoided the surgery, but I tore my cuff.
You haven't had it?
I haven't had to have it repaired. It wasn't that bad.
Well, it'll get worse with time, so it's something for me to look forward to. It's the worst experience I've ever had in my life. The operation is fantastic to watch it on television. You don't put you to sleep. Just numb it. The little tools the guy has are just unbelievable to do the job. But after that, it's hell. I mean, with a capital H. So you need to put it off as long as you want. This is not a new tab. It's just gotten to the point that it has to be fixed. It's interfering with my quality of life.
Mm-hmm.
So it has to be fixed. So I had the left one done, so I know exactly what I'm looking forward to, and how painful it is. I mean painful. Painful, painful with a capital P. Can't get comfortable, can't sleep. Horrible. But anyway, I gotta have it done. Put it off as long as you can, but you don't want to put it off till it gets too big. You raise your hand over your head?
I still can raise my hand over my head.
Huh?
Yes. Yeah, I did the physical therapy thing, so I got all my motion back. So it just aches sometimes now.
Well, as young as you are, you're going to have it done before you die, probably.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe the techniques will improve. I don't know. It's a basic, I guess, physiology of the shoulder. There's no circulation to speak of in the shoulder, so the healing processes take so long.
Slower. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Okay. Next question. Any more questions?
I just have a question about the library. Did you study in the library much? Did you do much research? Did you ask questions from the librarian?
I didn't. I went to. I used the library quite a bit for studying because it was quiet. Back in, they had desks, not desks really, but like small tables down buried in the stacks. Like the main reading room was on the, I guess, the top floor. Is that a 3-story building or a 2-story building? I don't know. Anyway, I think.
Well, 2 in a basement.
I say it's like 2.5.
I think I believe you. I don't know. Anyway, in the stacks, wherever they were, what deathly quiet in there. I doubt if I ever asked a librarian a question thinking about it. I don't know. And then back then, some of the departments, like the physics department, for instance, had a little library of its own. I don't know whether they still do that. So down in the front part of Smithy was here when I was here, but the back part is all new. And there was a physics library in there. Physics and math, I guess, library, because that building was used for physics and math. Back then, there were 3 buildings along the railroad. Washington Hall, the chemistry building, which is now Art Center or something. Mm-hmm. Then another building down towards the KA house that was the biology building.
Patty John.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, they had a name.
Yeah.
I don't know why they didn't restore that building. I guess it was in just too sad a shape. I don't know. But that was the biology building. The old Washington Franklin Hall was just used for storage. Fox Hall was here. Blackwell Auditorium was here. The front part of Smithy was here. And over in this region were a couple of frame buildings. Mm-hmm. I guess they're probably left over from the Second World War. I think one of those was economics, and the other one might have been, what was it, psychology? Is that the thing where they run the rats around the maze? I think the other one might have been psychology, I'm not sure. The school didn't have all these satellite offices and all these little houses around here either. And like I said, the library was just the two main dormitories, and then Irby, one of the, like it's a whole complex of those, I don't know what you call them, spread out down the street here. Irby was the only one that was there when I was here. And of course, it didn't have the Crenshaw Gymnasium beside the old Alumni Gymnasium. Swimming pool was in the Alumni Gymnasium. Fermi was back in the parking lot between, you know, all this stuff. And you shake, and Showalter knows all this stuff from our experience in the archives, I guess. So the place was the physical plant was a lot different. You talked about we were talking earlier about the windows in the cafeteria, about how some of the people thought it wasn't bright enough or something and made them in the pits. The physical plant, when I was here, was nothing compared to what it is today. The bookstore, maybe was bookstore, student center, I guess you would call it. It was like a soda fountain in it. It was maybe twice the size of these two rooms. And that was the bookstore, and they had also showed like Randolph-Macon T-shirts and things like that. And then at one end they had like a soda fountain type thing. Egg sandwiches were a big thing when I was here. I don't know whether they still are or not, but they were a big thing. Go over about 10 o'clock to that place and get an egg sandwich was a big thing. So, of course, the old gym, which had been torn down, I hated to see that be torn down, because that was really a historic landmark, especially with all those scores written on the side of it. Somewhere at home, I've got a speed graphic negative of that building, color negative. I haven't been able to locate it, but I sure would like to find out and get a nice print made. It really shows all those scores and everything. It's a big negative, you know. Speed graphic is like 3 by 4 or something, 3.5 by 4.5. So it's really a high fidelity photograph. It's like the cameras that newspaper people used to do back in the dark ages. So the physical plant's changed dramatically. Of course, there was nothing that compared to the Brock Center. I mean, that's just unbelievable. But that seems to be the small schools seem to really be into all that stuff. Like Virginia, used to go to Virginia Western to see when Randolph-Macon men and women's basketball teams come down. And they've got quite a nice physical plant over there. My daughter went to Lynchburg College, which is another small college. I guess it's about twice as big as Randolph-Macon, I guess. They've got a fantastic physical plant up there. It's really a beautiful school. I don't know if you've ever been up there, no. It's contributed a lot of money. I guess Macon Brock is trying his share, but there must be a tremendous amount of overhead to keep all that stuff operating too. But I don't know. If you got more questions, you got some profound questions over there. I thought this was your forte.
No, just enjoy listening.
Give me a second just to think of something. You cut your tape record off just so it won't be just quiet. Oh, and I'm about done anyway.
Okay.
I think the interest is, do I know anything interesting about my classmates, some interesting experience they might have or might not have? Probably in a word, no, really. I have a very poor characteristic. It's nothing to be proud of and nothing I'm going to change. I don't keep track of people. And I wish I had. I might keep track of them to a general sense, but somebody I'm good friends with and I move away or they move away or something like that, I don't do anything to try to keep the friendship going. Even though they might make an overture or something, I don't tend to be as responsive as I should. So I really haven't kept up with a lot of my classmates as far as what little experiences they might have had. as far as a project like this, I don't know about giving money or not, but Beverly Carter, who was in my class, became a vice president of the Night Router newspapers, which seemed like to me is a fairly significant job. He lives in New Jersey, and Bev may not be in too good a health, but I don't know. I've been meaning to send him an email or something to see how he's doing. But he might be somebody worth interviewing for a project like this. My former roommate, John Vexellio, the guy in the infamous pictures, John was from a right nice background. His father was a physician in Danville, but Johnny didn't have a car. Today he would have a car, right? If his daddy was a doctor, he'd have a car, but Johnny didn't have a car. Johnny went in the Navy, captain in the Navy. I think he was in naval intelligence, so he might have some interesting stories to tell. And I'm sure John contributed to the class of '57 scholarship fund, if that's the criteria. Bev probably did too. I don't know. I don't know who contributed. So I guess that's it. I reckon. I don't know. I appreciate the opportunity to share these thoughts with you. I hope they're worthwhile.
They are.
We appreciate you being here. Yes, we learn something every time somebody comes in to talk to us.
What did you learn?
What?